My husband called his gym affair a twin flame connection, not romance. When I caught him, he said neither of us is stupid enough to cross lines. Then I found messages about him smelling her, and now our 15-year marriage is over. It all kicked off last summer. My husband, who's 44, I'm 41, struck up an online friendship via Instagram with this woman, 33, he knew vaguely from seeing her at the gym. What started as online chats quickly moved to them coordinating workout times. He brought her up one evening, almost as an afterthought, saying something like, "Hey, there's this woman I've been talking to at the gym. Interesting person, I actually think you two would get along, you've got similar interests. Maybe I can arrange for us all to meet up with her and her husband sometime." Knowing my husband is typically quite reserved and introverted, I mentally filed it under "I'll believe that when it actually happens" and didn't push it. Honestly, the idea of him orchestrating a double date seemed pretty out of character. Months went by without another word about her. Absolute radio silence on that front. Life continued. He works from home full-time, while my job requires me in the office a few days each week. Then, one day I mentioned needing to work remotely the following day due to a doctor's appointment or something similar. That night at dinner, completely out of the blue, he casually drops, "Oh, you know that woman I mentioned from the gym ages ago? Well, she and I are grabbing lunch tomorrow. Oh, and don't worry, I did set up that couples thing. We're all meeting up in about 2 weeks." My reaction was immediate and clear, absolutely not okay with the one-on-one lunch. To his credit, he backed down on the lunch plan right away. But his announcement opened a floodgate of questions. He started telling me about this incredible, almost uncanny connection they shared, listing off obscure things they supposedly had in common, so many things it felt statistically improbable. He then mentioned she had researched it and proposed they might be twin flames. Apparently, her own husband had raised objections to their closeness, but framing it as a twin flame dynamic supposedly eased his concerns. My husband seemed to think this explanation would reassure me too, even suggesting maybe one of my male friends could be my twin flame. He quickly added that his understanding of twin flames wasn't about romance or soulmates, but more about people who act as catalysts for personal growth. The questions kept coming. Did he have her number? No, he insisted. Did they communicate outside the gym? Yes, but only through social media messages. Why had I been kept completely in the dark about this deepening twin flame connection for the past 4 months while it was apparently blossoming? His answer, "I didn't realize it was something you needed constant updates on." Was he physically attracted to her? A firm no, claiming he didn't find her attractive that way. Despite my deep reservations and the mounting red flags, I tried to extend some grace. He truly doesn't have many close friends, struggles socially, and can be awkward. So, I laid down my conditions. Clear boundaries needed to be established with her, and he had to commit to complete openness and honesty with me going forward. No more secrets. The following 2 weeks were a slow, painful unraveling. Piece by piece, I learned more about this friendship, and each new detail amplified my concerns. There were significant lies of omission. Contrary to his claims, she was exactly his physical type. He tried to reassure me by saying neither of them was stupid enough to cross any lines. I discovered they weren't just working out at our usual gym but coordinating sessions at different locations within the same franchise. She was bringing things like Hyuga, those deep conversation card games, to the gym, supposedly to foster deeper connection while they cooled down. The texting wasn't just logistical. She'd send him good morning messages at 4 a.m. They worked out together around 4:30 a.m., often with pet names like Sensei. She was also giving him small, random gifts, nothing extravagant, just things like a personalized first aid kit for his gym bag. His explanation was that he was intensely coaching her on nutrition and exercise routines because she aspired to compete in bodybuilding. By this point, the situation had become a constant source of conflict. We were arguing about her and his relationship with her almost daily. Then came the planned double date. On our way there, we were running a bit late, and she texted him directly to check our ETA. That's how I found out he absolutely did have her phone number, another lie exposed. Meeting them, I learned she was 33, didn't have a job, and they had no children. They presented as a perfectly nice couple on the surface, but nothing could shake the unease I felt about the whole dynamic and the foundation of lies it was built upon. The arguments didn't stop after the double date. They intensified. I repeatedly told him her behavior felt far too intimate, too much like a girlfriend's actions, and that his failure to shut it down or establish clear boundaries was the core problem. After about 6 weeks straight of daily conflict, constant tears on my part, and feeling increasingly desperate, I took a step I hadn't before. I checked his email. There, I found a message he'd written to himself the day before he'd originally planned, and I'd vetoed that lunch date. It was essentially a list of thoughts and questions for her. Had she been dreaming about him? Were the dreams positive or negative? He wanted to know details about her childhood, her family dynamics, even her clothing and shoe sizes. There was an apology embedded in the notes, explaining why he'd awkwardly tried, and apparently failed, to screenshot a message she sent him on a vanishing messenger platform. He wrote about how intensely he missed her but felt unable to express it over the phone. Seeing that raw emotional intimacy laid bare confirmed my worst fears. This was unequivocally an emotional affair, and I felt instantly done. When I confronted him this time, I didn't even raise my voice. I just stated it was over. He broke down, crying, insisting he'd already recognized the relationship was becoming problematic and had been planning to end it, but she preempted him. According to him, her husband had finally put his foot down, expressing deep discomfort with her obsessive behaviors and delivering an ultimatum about the friendship. He would never be okay with it. So, she was the one who officially called it off. With young children caught in the middle, and because the affair was supposedly now finished, I made the difficult choice to try and forgive. I insisted he block her number and all social media profiles. He had to promise zero contact and switch gyms entirely. I made a concession I immediately regretted, allowing him to just move to a different branch of the same gym franchise. My rationale was flimsy, maybe her husband would keep her away, but deep down, I knew it was a weak boundary, especially since they'd used that location together before. We began marriage counseling the week following Thanksgiving, ostensibly focused on rebuilding the shattered trust and addressing whatever vulnerabilities had led him down this path in the first place. Fast forward to January. He informs me he'd actually visited the old gym location a few times over the Christmas and New Year break and had run into her and her husband. When they asked where he'd been training, he mentioned the new location. While I was furious he'd waited 3 weeks to tell me about this encounter, a small, misguided part of me felt a flicker of hope that at least he was telling me, albeit belatedly. Maybe honesty was possible? That hope was short-lived. A week or so later, he admitted she had started showing up at his new gym location. I reiterated my absolute boundary, no communication, no rekindling of anything. The friendship was over, period. He agreed, promised he wouldn't speak to her. Around this same time in January, he started resisting marriage counseling sessions, consistently postponing the exercises and conversations we were supposed to be having to repair our relationship. His excuse was always exhaustion, blaming our youngest child's poor sleep schedule. "Can we just do it next week?" became his constant refrain. Then, sometime in late February or early March, he began sleeping in our youngest's room most nights, framing it as a way to help everyone get more rest. I disagreed with the approach, but honestly, we were both perpetually tired. My suspicions, however, were on high alert again. I started checking his phone, emails, and computer whenever I had the chance. I didn't find direct communication, but there were unsettling fragments, odd web searches deleted from his history a few days after they were made, synonyms for beautiful woman, different ways to say good morning beautiful, things like that. He'd also recently started leaving little affectionate notes in my car, so I clung to the hope maybe the searches were related to that, or perhaps just a crossword puzzle clue he was stuck on. He continued to swear vehemently that he wasn't talking to her, wouldn't betray me like that again, claiming he'd learned his lesson. It reached a point where my best friend tried to rationalize his behavior, suggesting maybe he truly was just a clueless, socially awkward guy who'd stumbled into this mess without malicious intent. She pointed out that my constant snooping hadn't yielded concrete proof of current contact. Her advice was stark, either commit to forgiving him and stop the surveillance, or accept it was over and leave. Exhausted and wanting to believe, I decided to stop snooping. That lasted about a week. One evening, shortly after bedtime, our youngest wandered out of his room. As I walked him back, I noticed my husband already asleep, snoring softly. But I also saw his phone screen lit up beside the bed, playing a video or movie, and crucially, not plugged into the charger. Instinctively, I picked it up to plug it in. That's when I saw it. The video player only occupied the top half of the screen. Below it, clear as day, was an active conversation with her on Instagram's vanishing message feature. What remained of the visible chat began with him sending "I smell you." Her response was a heart or hard eyes emoji, romantic face emoji, or red heart emoji. He had then sent her an Instagram post discussing how men of his zodiac sign supposedly enjoyed performing oral sex, highlighting a specific comment emphasizing doing it purely for his own pleasure. This hit particularly hard. In our entire 14-year relationship, I could count the instances of that happening on one hand, with fingers left over. My hands shaking, I grabbed my own phone and recorded a video of his screen, capturing the conversation before it could disappear forever. I immediately sent that video evidence to her husband via Instagram direct message. Then, I texted my husband 2 words, "We're done," followed by calling him a lying piece of shit. His response? "Can you not? Or at least wait until the kids are out of the house. Our children are young." His request effectively meant condemning myself to at least 14 more years of misery in a sham marriage. My reply was simple: "You're an asshole." The next day, during a tense conversation, the full, sordid truth finally spilled out. After that chance encounter at the gym back in December, she had found him on MyFitnessPal, discovering she was blocked everywhere else, and reached out. She then began showing up at his new gym location 2 days a week, every single week. Their routine, he claimed, was to meet briefly in the parking lot beforehand, hug, chat about their workouts, and then go inside and exercise separately without speaking inside the gym. In his warped logic, this meant he hadn't technically lied about not talking to her in the gym. When she first messaged him on MFP, he claimed he initially ignored it. But she followed up, allegedly claiming deep depression, even hinting at losing the will to live without his friendship. His response then was to tell her to lean on her husband. But she persisted. Eventually, he admitted to her that he missed her too and agreed it was unfair that their spouses were dictating their friendships. That's when they resumed communicating secretly via Instagram vanishing messages. His method involved unblocking her, chatting, and then immediately reblocking her, so any check of his phone would show her as blocked and give the appearance of no contact. Her husband later confirmed this pattern to me. The deceit ran even deeper. Let's say I discovered the incriminating messages on a Monday night. On Tuesday, the very next day, he told me he needed space and effectively hid from me, but he actually spent the afternoon having lunch with her at her favorite restaurant, choosing a place specifically because he didn't want to be found. Wednesday involved me essentially screaming and losing my composure at him during our talk. Thursday and Friday, I was away on a pre-planned business trip. Apparently, while I was gone, they worked out together on Thursday, during which she supposedly cried on his shoulder. On Friday, they had lunch again, this time at his favorite restaurant. Then, on Saturday, they met at a Starbucks. It was during this meeting that she informed him her husband had requested they take a 2-week break from each other, her and my husband, to focus on repairing their marriage, hers and her husband's. By this point, I had already scheduled my initial consultation with a divorce attorney. His actions spoke louder than any apology ever could. His priorities were crystal clear. He returned from that Starbucks meeting absolutely furious. Not at the situation, not at his own behavior, but at me and her husband. Because he had actually told me he was going to meet her that Saturday, a rare instance of honesty, likely because he felt cornered, I had, in a moment of sheer frustration, messaged her husband something like, "Damn, seems like they just can't stay away from each other, can they?" Her husband, understandably interpreting this as proof my husband was still lying to me about their interactions, apparently called her immediately, irate. She put the call on speakerphone. My husband overheard her husband calling him a liar, and he was incandescent with rage. He hadn't shown this level of fury when I had called him a pathological liar, a cheat, and every other name under the sun. But the idea that they thought he was dishonest? Unacceptable. He actually demanded that I call her husband to clarify that I had known about the Starbucks meeting in advance, to vouch that this time he hadn't lied to me. I flatly refused. What they thought of him, or us, meant absolutely nothing to me anymore. My refusal only made him angrier. I have my own theories about why their perception mattered so much more to him than mine, you can probably guess. It was also during this fallout that I learned from her husband that she identifies as polyamorous, something my husband had apparently known all along but never disclosed to me. Her husband was allegedly still coming to terms with it himself. More truths surfaced. My husband had taken her out to lunch before the initial planned outing that I had vetoed months ago. They'd had multiple conversations, initiated by her, about detailed sexual preferences, likes, dislikes, favorite positions. She had even allegedly tried to persuade him to accompany her on a trip to NYC for a bodybuilding competition, an invitation he declined, likely, in my opinion, only because it would have been impossible to hide. I formally retained the divorce attorney. The arguments continued. His initial stance was defiance. I was being controlling, I needed to be more understanding, I should just accept this friendship. After about a week of this, facing the undeniable reality of divorce papers, his tune finally shifted towards apologies. Suddenly, he wanted to fix us. Could I please find a new marriage counselor for us? Again, a resounding no from me. The responsibility wasn't mine. He kept insisting I was acting too quickly, being hasty, that we needed more time because change doesn't happen overnight. Around this time, 2 of my friends, the same ones mentioned in the edit of my original post, initially suggested our problems might be fixable if both of us truly committed to the work. However, as more and more details of his sustained deception emerged in the following weeks, even they came around to agree that his investment seemed minimal and performative. He wasn't demonstrating the level of commitment necessary to make fixing this truly possible. Meanwhile, I was stuck. Still living in the house, sleeping in separate rooms, financially hamstrung because my name wasn't on the mortgage and, crucially, because several months prior he had simply stopped paying my credit card bill, a card I primarily used for household expenses we'd agreed he'd cover, without breathing a word to me. This act tanked my credit score from a pristine 800 down to a dismal 580. Moving out wasn't financially feasible at that moment, and our state mandates a separation period before divorce proceedings can even begin. So, I told him plainly, he had until the ink dried on the divorce papers to show me he wasn't the callous, self-absorbed person his actions had consistently revealed him to be. I planned to wait until the mandatory separation period concluded before officially filing. We've been formally separated since the end of April, right after I found those devastating texts. Following weeks of intense arguments where I made it unequivocally clear that our marriage had zero future with her anywhere in the picture, he finally took concrete action, blocked her on every conceivable platform and switched to a completely different gym unaffiliated with the old franchise. There have been other minor adjustments, but critically, we haven't seen a marriage counselor. His resistance continued, nor has he sought individual therapy to address his own issues. My plan remains firm: move out as soon as I can repair my credit sufficiently to secure a decent rental in our current neighborhood, minimizing disruption for the children. But the longer this drags on, the more it solidifies my feeling that it's far too little, far too late. Deep down, I don't believe he loves me. His actions demonstrated time and again that he chose her feelings, her company, the thrill of their connection, over me, over our family, over our marriage vows. It wasn't until her husband intervened, or until I initiated divorce proceedings, that he suddenly seemed concerned about my pain, expressed remorse, or claimed to value our marriage. He actively pursued dates and secret meetings with her after being caught red-handed, instead of immediately cutting ties and focusing on repairing the damage with me. Every single positive change, every boundary finally respected, has been extracted through my tears, my anger, my exhaustion. He only ever conceded the specific point I was fighting about at that moment, never showing proactive understanding or change. The hurt is immense. I know I deserve better than this. The thought of what this divorce will do to our kids tears me apart, but I cannot model a relationship for them where their mother isn't valued, respected, or prioritized. I cannot stay where I am clearly considered disposable. He continues to claim I'm blowing it all out of proportion, clinging to the narrative that it was just an innocent friendship, emphasizing it never became sexual, as if the explicit conversations and emotional betrayal don't count. He excuses the week of secret dates post-discovery as a mental break, saying he felt lost and she was the only one he could talk to because I was being nagging, overly critical, and controlling. She was his escape, he says, justifying why the friendship felt so vital, even as it destroyed me. He still professes to believe we can work through this. I fundamentally do not. He has systematically demolished every opportunity I gave him for honesty, for prioritizing our relationship. He ignored every warning, every plea for safeguards. The trust isn't just gone, it's in negative territory. So, while I asked for different perspectives before, my own perspective has become painfully clear. We are unequivocally dead in the water. Update: so, that chapter is officially closed. The divorce is finalized. It still feels profoundly strange to say that after nearly 15 years wrapped up in that marriage. Picking up where things left off, we were separated but still cohabiting, him making those last-ditch, 11th-hour efforts to show he'd finally blocked her and switched gyms, me frantically trying to resuscitate my credit score from the wreckage he'd made of it so I could actually establish my own household. Those months living under the same roof but in separate emotional universes were incredibly taxing. He kept trying, in his way. More little notes appeared, attempts to initiate deep conversations about us and our future, persistent inquiries about whether I'd found that new marriage counselor he seemed to think I was responsible for sourcing. But every gesture felt completely hollow, performative almost. It was like watching someone go through the motions of remorse without any genuine understanding of the devastation caused. Each attempt just threw into sharp relief the fact that I'd had to practically set our life ablaze, screaming, crying, hiring lawyers, just to get him to implement the most basic, fundamental boundaries he should have respected from day one. The trust wasn't just damaged, it felt like it had evaporated entirely, leaving behind only resentment and scar tissue. He talked about wanting to change, about needing time, but I saw no concrete action towards self-reflection, no individual therapy sought, no books read, no real effort to understand why he'd made those choices. It was all vague promises contingent on me leading the repair effort. The most significant practical barrier was simply getting out. Repairing my credit felt like an uphill battle fought with toothpicks. It took months of painstaking effort, endless phone calls negotiating with creditors, meticulously disputing errors, living on an austerity budget, all while navigating the incredibly awkward daily reality of sharing space with the man who had systematically dismantled my sense of security. We tried, for the kids' sake, to maintain a veneer of civility, a semblance of normalcy, but the air was thick with unspoken tension. They were young, thankfully shielded from the worst of the emotional undercurrents, but the strain was immense. Finally, towards the end of last summer, I managed to claw my credit score back to a point where renting was feasible. I found a modest townhouse available for rent in a neighboring area, not palatial, but crucially, it was safe, affordable on my own, and allowed the kids to remain in their familiar school district. Moving day itself was a blur of conflicting emotions. He offered to help, probably seeing it as a final chance to appear supportive, his expression a mixture of sadness and perhaps resignation. I mostly felt numb, methodically packing away the remnants of nearly 15 years of shared history, focusing intensely on not breaking down in front of the children. Once I was settled in my own space, I didn't hesitate. I filed the divorce papers immediately. There was no dramatic turning back point, the decision had been solidifying for months. The legal process itself was less acrimonious than I might have feared, certainly not the high-drama spectacle often portrayed. It was mostly a tedious slog through financial disclosures, asset division negotiations, and endless lawyer communications. We did clash over finances. He initially tried to paint himself as the wrong party, subtly suggesting my refusal to tolerate his friendship was the unreasonable factor. But ultimately, the evidence of his financial negligence towards me, the credit card debacle, and the clear narrative of the emotional affair left him with little ground to contest things too fiercely. Thankfully, we reached an agreement on child custody without turning it into a protracted battle. Shared custody, alternating weeks, that felt like the least disruptive option for the kids, even though my heart ached at the thought of them splitting their time. It was the one area where we both managed to prioritize their needs above our own conflict. I haven't heard a whisper about the other woman, GW, since. I have no idea what became of her or her own marriage, and frankly, I expend zero energy wondering. My ex knows better than to ever bring her name up in my presence. The divorce decree was finalized several months ago, maybe around the turn of the year. There wasn't a singular moment of catharsis or overwhelming relief, just a profound, bone-deep exhaustion coupled with a quiet sense of finality. Signing those last papers felt like crossing the finish line of a grueling race I never signed up for. I walked out of the lawyer's office feeling utterly drained but also, for the first time in a long time, untethered. Life now revolves around my weeks with the kids and my weeks alone. Co-parenting remains a work in progress. He's consistent with schedules and financial support, and generally avoids direct conflict. But the underlying trust required for truly collaborative parenting simply isn't there. I interact with him as the father of my children, but the image of the husband who betrayed me so thoroughly is impossible to erase. The kids seem to be adapting as well as can be expected. Children possess an incredible resilience. Still, the guilt I carry about their fractured family life is heavy. Yet, I remain resolute in my decision. They deserve to see their mother whole, respected, and not trapped in a cycle of tears, suspicion, and simmering resentment. And I deserve a life free from the constant dread of the next lie, the next secret meeting, the next betrayal. Am I truly happy yet? Happiness feels like a distant shore I'm still swimming towards. Healing is proving to be a messy, non-linear process. Good days, filled with work focus and the simple joys of time with my children, are interspersed with days where waves of anger or sadness unexpectedly pull me under. But beneath it all, there's a growing sense of lightness, an undeniable freedom from the crushing weight of anxiety and distrust that defined the last year of my marriage. I'm slowly, deliberately rebuilding my finances, my social life, my sense of self. It's challenging work. But when I look back at the wreckage of that relationship, there's no doubt left in my mind. We were irrevocably broken long before the final papers were signed. Leaving wasn't just an option, it was the only path back to myself. He made his choices, again and again. Now, we're both living with the consequences of those choices, just separately. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. I stood up to my toxic stepbrother and uninvited him from my wedding. It caused family drama, but 6 months later, something incredible happened that I never saw coming. My childhood was pretty typical until I turned 10. That's when my mom was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. She fought hard for almost a year, but in the end, the disease took her from us. I remember sitting in the hospital room, holding her hand as she slipped away. Dad, 55M, was devastated. They had been high school sweethearts, married right after graduation. Mom was the love of his life, and suddenly he was a single parent to a grieving 10-year-old. The next few years were tough. Dad threw himself into work, trying to keep us afloat financially while dealing with his own grief. He worked long hours at the factory, often picking up overtime shifts. I learned to be independent pretty quickly. By 12, I was doing my own laundry, packing my school lunches, and even cooking simple meals for us. We weren't poor, but money was always tight. I remember the embarrassment of wearing hand-me-downs to school and not being able to go on class trips because we couldn't afford it. But despite the hardships, Dad and I were close. We had a standing Saturday morning tradition of making pancakes together and watching cartoons. Those simple moments meant the world to me. When I was 14, Dad started dating again. I was hesitant at first, but I could see how much happier he was. He went out a few times with women he met through friends or work, but nothing serious. Then he met Sandra, 50F, at a community fundraiser. She was beautiful, successful, and made Dad laugh in a way I hadn't heard since Mom died. Sandra was different from the women in our neighborhood. She owned her own marketing firm and lived in a big house in the fancy part of town. She was recently divorced and had a son, Jake, then 14M. At first, I was excited about the idea of having a brother. Growing up as an only child, I'd always wondered what it would be like to have siblings. Dad and Sandra dated for about 2 years before they got married. During that time, we'd often have dinners together or go on outings as a group. Jake seemed nice enough, if a bit aloof. He went to a private school and had a busy schedule of extracurricular activities, so we didn't spend much time together. The wedding was a lavish affair, nothing like the small backyard ceremonies I was used to attending. I remember feeling out of place in my new dress, the most expensive piece of clothing I'd ever owned, watching Dad and Sandra dance under twinkling lights. That night was the beginning of a whole new life for us. We moved into Sandra's big house in her upscale neighborhood. Suddenly, I had my own room with an ensuite bathroom, a far cry from the small 2-bedroom apartment Dad and I had shared. The change was exciting but also overwhelming. I felt like I'd stepped into a different world. The first few months were an adjustment period. Dad was working less, as Sandra's income allowed him to cut back on hours. I was enrolled in the same private school as Jake, wearing a uniform for the first time in my life. The coursework was more challenging, and I struggled to keep up at first. My classmates seemed so sophisticated, talking about summer homes and ski trips while I'd never even been on a plane. Jake and I were the same age, but we couldn't have been more different. He'd grown up with every advantage, expensive clothes, the latest gadgets, regular vacations to exotic places. I, on the other hand, still felt weird about asking Dad to buy me new shoes when my old ones got holes in them. At first, Jake seemed merely indifferent to me. But as time went on, his attitude became more openly disdainful. He'd make comments about how I dressed or ate, implying I lacked refinement. Once, when I was struggling with a French assignment, a language he'd been studying since elementary school, he laughed and said, "I guess some people just aren't cut out for culture." What hurt more than Jake's comments was Dad's reaction, or lack thereof. He never seemed to notice the way Jake spoke to me, or if he did, he didn't say anything. I think he was so eager to bond with Jake and please Sandra that he overlooked how Jake treated me. There were times I wanted to say something, to tell Dad how much it hurt, but I held back. I didn't want to cause problems in his new marriage. As high school went on, the divide between Jake and me only grew. He was popular, involved in student government and captain of the debate team. I found my niche with the art kids, spending hours in the ceramics studio trying to recreate the bowls Mom and I used to make together. When it came time for college, Jake went off to an Ivy League school on the East Coast. Dad and Sandra were so proud, throwing him a big going-away party. I chose to attend the local state university, living at home to save money. I could tell Dad was a bit disappointed, but he tried to hide it. During college breaks, Jake would come home and regale everyone with stories of his fancy internships and exotic spring break trips. Meanwhile, I was juggling classes and a part-time job at a local coffee shop. Jake would make snide comments about how I was wasting my potential by not going to a real school. It was during my sophomore year of college that I met Alex, 31M. He came into the coffee shop where I worked, ordered a complicated drink, and then left a generous tip. We started chatting, and soon he became a regular. Alex had grown up in the same working-class neighborhood as me. He never went to college, instead learning carpentry from his uncle and eventually starting his own contracting business. Alex and I bonded over our shared background and values. He understood the pride I felt in earning my own money and the importance I placed on hard work. We started dating, and for the first time in years, I felt truly seen and appreciated. When I introduced Alex to my family, Jake immediately started making backhanded comments. He asked Alex if he was just a handyman and seemed shocked when I mentioned Alex owned his own business. Dad didn't say anything to defend Alex, which really hurt. Sandra, surprisingly, was polite and welcoming, even expressing interest in Alex's work. Over the next few years, I saw my dad and stepfamily less and less. I threw myself into building a life with Alex. We moved in together, adopted a rescue dog named Max, and started talking about marriage. Alex's business took off, specializing in eco-friendly home renovations. I finished my degree in graphic design and started freelancing, eventually landing a full-time job at a small marketing firm. Last year, on our 5th anniversary, Alex proposed. He took me back to the coffee shop where we met, got down on one knee right where he used to sit, and asked me to marry him. I happily accepted. We set a date for this fall and started planning our dream wedding, a rustic chic affair at a converted barn venue. When it came time to make the guest list, I hesitated over inviting Jake. Part of me felt obligated to include him as family. But a bigger part dreaded having his negative energy at my wedding. I thought about all the snide comments he might make about the venue, the food, or our friends. After much deliberation, I decided to invite Dad, Sandra, and Jake, hoping that maybe time had matured Jake. But last month when I went to Dad and Sandra's for dinner to discuss wedding plans, Jake was there. Almost immediately he started making digs about our quaint backyard wedding and how he was surprised we could afford a real venue. I tried to brush it off, but then he started criticizing our choice not to have a religious ceremony, saying it showed how unsophisticated we were. I'd had enough and told Jake he was uninvited to the wedding. He laughed it off, saying he probably couldn't make it anyway since he had a friend's yacht party that weekend. Dad pulled me aside and said I was being too sensitive. He told me to apologize to Jake and said it would look bad if my stepbrother wasn't at the wedding. I left feeling angry and hurt. I don't want someone at my wedding who has done nothing but put me down for years. But I also don't want to create a rift in the family. Alex says he'll support whatever I decide, but I can tell he doesn't want Jake there either. Part of me wants to stand my ground and have the wedding I want, surrounded by people who genuinely love and support us. But another part feels guilty about excluding Jake and potentially disappointing my dad. I'm torn and could use some outside perspectives. Ida, if I don't invite Jake to the wedding? Update 1. Thank you all for your supportive comments and advice. After a lot of reflection, I decided to stick to my guns and not invite Jake to the wedding. However, the situation has gotten more complicated. I called Dad to explain my decision. I chose a time when I knew he'd be alone, not wanting Sandra or Jake to overhear. As the phone rang, I felt a mix of determination and anxiety. When Dad answered, I took a deep breath and dove in. I started by telling Dad how much I valued our family, but that Jake's constant put-downs and elitist attitude had no place at my wedding. I reminded him of specific incidents, like the time Jake mocked my high school graduation dress, or when he implied Alex was a gold digger when we got engaged. I emphasized that this day was about celebrating mine and Alex's love, not appeasing others for appearance's sake. Dad didn't take it well. His voice got louder as he accused me of being selfish and dividing the family. He brought up how much they'd done for me, the private school education, the financial support during college. I felt my own temper rising as I pointed out that I'd never asked for those things, that I'd been happy in public school and had wanted to take out loans for college. The conversation got heated. Dad threatened to skip the wedding if Jake wasn't invited, saying I was forcing him to choose between his children. I reminded him of all the times he failed to stand up for me when Jake was being cruel, but he dismissed my feelings, saying I was dwelling on the past and needed to grow up. By the time we hung up, we were both upset. I felt drained and conflicted. Part of me wondered if I was doing the right thing, if maybe I should just give in to keep the peace. But a stronger part knew that I deserved to have a wedding day free from Jake's negativity. Sandra called me the next day. To my surprise, she was more understanding. She started by apologizing for calling so soon after my fight with Dad, saying she thought I might need some time to cool off. Then she admitted that she and Dad had spoiled Jake and failed to correct his behavior over the years. She shared some of her own frustrations with Jake's attitude, revealing a side of their relationship I'd never seen before. Sandra said she respected my decision and would attend the wedding regardless, but hoped I'd reconsider about Jake. She suggested a family therapy session, thinking it might help us all communicate better. I told her I'd think about it, appreciating her efforts but still feeling wary. Jake somehow found out about the uninvite, probably through Dad, and started posting passive-aggressive comments on social media about fake family and conditional love. He even reached out to some mutual family friends, spinning a story about how I was unfairly excluding him. Soon, I was getting messages from cousins and aunts, some supporting me, others criticizing my decision. The situation stirred up a lot of family drama. Some relatives sided with Dad and Jake, saying I was overreacting and that family should always come first. Others, particularly on my mom's side, fully supported my decision. My mom's sister, Aunt Lisa, was especially vocal in her support. She reminded me of how Mom always taught me to stand up for myself. The family divide was taking its toll on me. I found myself constantly checking my phone, dreading the next angry message or manipulative post. It was affecting my sleep and my work. Alex noticed how stressed I was becoming and suggested we take a weekend away to regroup and focus on what we wanted for our wedding. We spent a peaceful couple of days at a cabin in the mountains, hiking and talking through our feelings. Being away from the constant barrage of family opinions helped clear my head. Alex and I had long conversations about our values, our vision for our future, and what family meant to us. It really reinforced that we were on the same page and that our relationship was the priority. When we got back from our trip, we made some decisions. 1. We're sticking to our guns about Jake. He's not invited to the wedding. 2. We're hiring security for the wedding, just in case Jake or anyone else tries to cause a scene. 3. We're going to have a special memorial for my mom during the ceremony. We'll light a candle and I'll wear a locket with her picture. This feels even more important now, a reminder of the strong woman who raised me. 4. We're scaling back Dad's role in the wedding. He was supposed to walk me down the aisle, but given his reaction, I'm considering walking alone or asking my uncle, Mom's brother, to do it. 5. We're going to take a break from social media until after the wedding to avoid the ongoing drama. I'm sad that this happy time has turned into such a source of stress, but I'm trying to stay focused on the positives. Alex and I are more united than ever, and this has shown us who really supports our relationship. My college roommate, Sarah, has been an incredible support, helping with wedding plans and providing a listening ear whenever I need to vent. I'm still hoping Dad will come around, but I'm prepared for the possibility that he won't attend. It hurts to think he might not be there, but I refuse to compromise on having a wedding that truly reflects Alex and me, surrounded by people who genuinely support us. The next few months will be challenging as we navigate this family tension while trying to plan our special day. But I'm feeling stronger in my decision and more certain than ever that I'm marrying the right person. Whatever happens with my family, I know that Alex and I are starting our own family unit built on mutual respect, understanding, and love. Update 2. A lot has happened since my last update, and I wanted to share how things unfolded. About a month before the wedding, Dad reached out to me. He asked if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us. I was hesitant but agreed. We decided to meet at a small cafe halfway between our homes, neutral territory for what I expected to be a difficult conversation. When I arrived, Dad was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. As I approached, I was struck by how tired and stressed he looked. The confident, jovial man I remembered from my childhood seemed to have aged years in just a few months. We started with awkward small talk about the weather and work. Then, after a long pause, Dad surprised me. He started by apologizing. He admitted that he had been so focused on trying to blend our families and please Sandra that he had neglected my feelings over the years. He acknowledged that he should have stepped in when Jake was being hurtful and that he had failed me as a father in many ways. As he spoke, I could see the genuine remorse in his eyes. He told me that my stance on the wedding had forced him to reflect on his relationships with both Jake and me. He realized he had been enabling Jake's bad behavior and that it was damaging our entire family dynamic. Dad shared that he and Sandra had started going to family counseling. He said it was opening his eyes to patterns in their parenting and family dynamics that he'd never noticed before. He talked about how he'd always felt guilty about the years when money was tight after Mom died, and how that guilt had led him to overcompensate with material things once he married Sandra. I was touched by Dad's sincerity, but still wary. Years of hurt don't disappear with one conversation. I told him I appreciated his apology but that it didn't erase everything that had happened. We ended up talking for hours, really opening up about our feelings and experiences since he married Sandra. It was emotional and difficult, but also cathartic. Towards the end of our conversation, Dad brought up the wedding. He said he respected my decision about Jake and wouldn't pressure me to invite him. He asked if he could still attend the wedding, saying he would understand if I said no but that he really wanted to be there for me. I told Dad I needed some time to think about it. The conversation had given me a lot to process, and I wanted to discuss it with Alex before making any decisions. Dad understood and thanked me for hearing him out. After thinking it over and having a long talk with Alex, I decided to give Dad another chance. I called him and said he could come to the wedding, but I was sticking with my decision to have my uncle walk me down the aisle. Dad accepted this graciously, saying he was just happy to be included. In a surprising turn of events, Sandra reached out to me separately. She told me that she and Dad had had some hard conversations about their parenting of Jake. She admitted that they had spoiled him and failed to instill good values. Sandra said they were taking steps to address this, including cutting off Jake financially until he agrees to attend counseling and show real change. Sandra also apologized for not being more supportive of me over the years. She shared that as a career-focused woman, she had sometimes felt unsure of how to connect with a stepdaughter. She expressed a desire to build a better relationship moving forward. The week before the wedding, I received an unexpected text from Jake. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was more reflective than I'd ever known him to be. He said he regretted how he'd treated me over the years and that he was working on himself. He said he understood why he wasn't invited to the wedding and wished Alex and me well. It wasn't much, but it felt like a small step in the right direction. The wedding itself was beautiful. We had perfect weather for our outdoor ceremony at the converted barn. Dad kept his word and didn't cause any drama. He seemed genuinely happy for Alex and me, and even made an effort to mingle with Alex's family. I caught him a few times looking at me with a mixture of pride and sadness. I think he was remembering Mom and wishing she could have been there. Sandra was there too, and she went out of her way to be kind and helpful. She complimented my dress, helped coordinate with the caterers when there was a small mix-up, and even gave a heartfelt toast at the reception. Having my uncle walk me down the aisle felt right. We included a lovely tribute to my mom, lighting a candle and displaying her photo. It brought tears to many eyes, including Dad's. The ceremony and reception were filled with love and joy, just as we'd hoped. While the road to the wedding was rocky, I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of our family relationships. There's still a lot of work to be done, but it feels like we're moving in a positive direction. Update 3. It's been 6 months since the wedding, and I wanted to give a final update on how things have progressed with my family. The positive changes I saw in Dad at the wedding have continued. He's been making a real effort to be present in my life, calling regularly and even helping Alex and me with some home renovation projects. Last month, he surprised us by showing up on a Saturday morning with bagels and coffee, just like we used to do when I was a kid. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot. We've had some deep conversations about the past, and while it's been painful at times, it feels like we're finally addressing issues that have been simmering for years. Dad's been more open about his struggles after Mom died and how that influenced his decisions with Sandra and Jake. It's helping me understand him better, even if I don't agree with everything he did. Sandra has also been surprisingly supportive. She's become something of a mentor to me in my career, offering advice and even connecting me with some valuable networking opportunities. It's a dynamic I never expected, but I'm grateful for it. She recently invited me to speak at a women in business seminar her company was hosting, which was a great experience. The biggest surprise has been Jake. About 2 months after the wedding, he reached out and asked if we could meet. I was hesitant but agreed to coffee in a public place. When we met, Jake seemed different, humbler, more self-aware. He gave me a full, genuine apology for his behavior over the years. Jake explained that losing his financial support from Dad and Sandra had been a wake-up call. He'd started therapy and had to get a regular job for the first time in his life. He's working as an entry-level marketing assistant, and the experience of having a boss and coworkers seems to have opened his eyes to his privilege and the harm his attitudes had caused. While I appreciated Jake's apology, I made it clear that rebuilding our relationship would take time and effort on his part. Over the past few months, he's been consistently showing up, remembering my birthday, asking thoughtful questions about my life and work, and even offering to help when Alex and I moved to a new house. It's a work in progress, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Last month, we had our first full family dinner in years, me, Alex, Dad, Sandra, and Jake. It was a bit awkward at first, with everyone seeming unsure of how to act around each other. But as the evening went on, it started to feel nice. We were able to laugh together and have real conversations. Jake and Alex even found some common ground talking about their businesses. I'm not naive enough to think all our issues are resolved. There's still tension sometimes, and we're all learning how to communicate better. But for the first time in a long time, it feels like we're actually becoming a family, rather than just people who are related. This experience has taught me a lot about standing up for myself, the importance of genuine apologies and changed behavior, and the possibility of growth and reconciliation. I'm grateful for where we've ended up, and I'm looking forward to continuing to strengthen these relationships in the future. Alex and I are doing great. We're settling into married life and starting to talk about having kids in the next year or two. It feels good to know that if we do decide to start a family, our child will have grandparents and an uncle who are working on being better people. I hope my story can offer some hope to others dealing with family conflict. Change is possible, but it takes time, effort, and a willingness to be vulnerable and honest with each other.